I am Audrey, 23, and I worked 3 jobs through college while drowning in student loans. Meanwhile, my sister Harper lived in a luxury apartment, drove a new car, and never worried about money. I discovered the truth accidentally. My parents funded her entire life while telling me to be independent. Then my grandfather Lawrence found out, unleashing a family reckoning nobody saw coming. If you've ever felt the sting of family favoritism, drop a comment below and let me know where you're watching from. Subscribe for more stories about family secrets and unexpected justice. Growing up in suburban Minneapolis, I always sensed something was different about how my parents treated me compared to my sister. Our middle-class family lived comfortably in a 4-bedroom house with a fenced backyard where my sister Harper and I spent countless summer afternoons playing make-believe games. Harper was 3 years younger, with naturally curly hair that my mother Diana would spend hours styling, while my straight brown locks got a quick brush in the morning. These small differences stacked up over time. My father Kenneth worked as a financial advisor at a respected firm downtown, while my mother managed a boutique clothing store. We weren't wealthy, but we had enough for family vacations to Florida every other year and new clothes at the start of each school year. The subtle favoritism toward Harper showed in 100 tiny ways. She got the slightly larger bedroom when we moved to a new house when I was 10. Her dance recitals warranted professional photography, while my academic awards earned a quick phone snapshot. When Harper broke an expensive vase running through the house, my parents sighed and said, "She's just spirited." When I accidentally stained the carpet with art supplies, I was grounded for a week for not being responsible. Despite this, I excelled academically. School became my sanctuary, a place where effort earned recognition and hard work produced results. By junior high, I discovered a passion for architecture after a field trip to downtown Minneapolis. The elegant lines of the buildings against the sky sparked something in me, and I began sketching building designs in my free time. My 8th grade art teacher, Ms. Addison, recognized my talent and encouraged me to pursue it. She was the first adult who seemed to see potential in me that even my parents missed. Throughout high school, I maintained a 3.9 GPA while participating in the architecture club and taking advanced placement classes. Meanwhile, Harper struggled through her classes, frequently calling on me to help with homework while my parents praised her for trying her best. When she brought home C grades, they celebrated with ice cream. My grades were met with nods and comments like, "That's what we expect from you, Audrey." At 16, I started working weekends at a local coffee shop, saving every dollar possible in my college fund. My grandfather Lawrence, my father's father, was the only family member who consistently believed in me. A retired engineer who had built bridges across the Midwest, he would visit monthly, bringing architecture books and stories about famous buildings. "You have an eye for structure," he would tell me, examining my sketches with genuine interest. "Keep working, keep learning. Education will take you places." Senior year arrived with a flurry of college applications. I applied to 7 schools, including my dream program at Cornell University. The day my acceptance letter arrived, I screamed so loudly our neighbor Amanda came over to check if everything was all right. I also received offers from University of Michigan, Washington University, and several state schools. That evening, my parents suggested a family dinner at my favorite restaurant to celebrate. "We're so proud of you," my mother said as we shared appetizers at the Italian bistro downtown. "Cornell is quite an achievement." "Your hard work paid off," my father added, raising his water glass in a toast to Audrey's future in architecture. For that single evening, I felt like the center of attention, like my years of effort had finally earned their recognition. The conversation turned to logistics, moving to New York, dorm options, and class schedules. My father mentioned something about looking at the finances, but didn't elaborate. I assumed, given their careers and comfortable lifestyle, they had been planning for this expense. After all, they had always emphasized the importance of education. That night, I called Grandfather Lawrence to share the news. "Cornell." "That's wonderful, Audrey," he said, his voice crackling with joy over the phone. "Your grandmother would have been so proud. She always said you were going places." "I'm excited but nervous too," I admitted. "It's expensive, even with my savings from work." "Don't worry about that," Lawrence said confidently. "Your education is an investment in your future. I'm sure your parents understand that." 3 months before I was set to leave for college, my parents called me into the living room for what they called an important discussion. I sat on the edge of our blue sofa, expecting to talk about moving arrangements or perhaps a budget for textbooks. "Audrey," my father began, hands folded in his lap, "we've been thinking about your college plans." My mother nodded. "We believe it's important for you to learn independence and self-reliance." "What do you mean?" I asked, a strange heaviness forming in my stomach. "We've decided that we won't be contributing financially to your education," my father stated flatly. "You're smart and capable. You've already shown you can hold a job. This is your opportunity to build character and learn the value of working for what you want." The words hit me like a physical blow. "But," I thought, "what about the college fund? Haven't you been saving?" My parents exchanged glances. "We have some savings for emergencies," my mother explained. "But we believe you'll appreciate your education more if you earn it yourself." I felt tears building but forced them back. "What about student loans? And housing?" "Cornell is expensive. There are plenty of loan options," my father said, his tone suddenly businesslike, as if we were one of his clients. "Many students work through college. It builds resilience." That night, I cried silently in my bedroom, confused and hurt. All those years of working toward this goal, thinking my parents supported me, only to discover I was completely on my own. Still, determination burned within me. If they wouldn't help, I would find a way myself. I would prove I could succeed even without their support. Little did I know that this was just the beginning of a much deeper betrayal. My first semester at Cornell arrived with a mixture of excitement and anxiety. The campus was even more beautiful than I had imagined. Historic buildings with intricate stonework surrounded by towering trees that would soon turn brilliant shades of red and orange. My architecture classes challenged and inspired me, but the reality of my financial situation quickly overshadowed everything else. I secured the cheapest housing option, a tiny room shared with 2 other students in one of the oldest dorms on campus. While other freshmen decorated their spaces with new bedding sets and wall art, I made do with the second-hand linens I had packed from home. My roommates Julia and Belinda were nice enough, but they couldn't understand why I never joined them for pizza nights or weekend activities. "Come on, it's just $20 for the movie and dinner," Julia would say, applying mascara before heading out. "I can't tonight," became my standard response. "I have a shift at the library." The truth was, I was working 3 part-time jobs totaling over 30 hours each week. Mornings at a campus coffee cart starting at 5:30 a.m., afternoon shifts at the library, and weekend hours at a restaurant downtown. Between classes, homework, and work, I averaged 5 hours of sleep per night. I had taken out the maximum student loans available, but they barely covered tuition and housing. Food, books, and everything else came from what I earned. Each Sunday evening, I called home, hoping for some encouragement or at least interest in my new life. The conversations were always brief and unsatisfying. "How's school?" my mother would ask. "Challenging but good. I'm learning so much about structural design and..." "That's nice, dear." Harper got the lead in her theater program's fall production. The conversation would inevitably shift to Harper, who had started at the University of Minnesota that same fall. From my parents' descriptions, her college experience sounded idyllic, focusing solely on classes and social activities. Then came the social media posts that made my stomach churn. Harper shared photos of her spacious off-campus apartment, furnished with brand-new items. She posed beside a shiny blue Honda Civic with a red bow on it. "Thanks for the graduation gift." Read the caption. Weekend trips with friends, designer clothes, concerts. Her feed displayed a carefree college life that bore no resemblance to my exhausting reality. When Thanksgiving break arrived, I took the bus home instead of flying to save money. The 30-hour journey left me exhausted, but I looked forward to home-cooked meals and sleeping in my own bed. Harper arrived the day after me, driving her new car into the driveway. That evening, while helping Harper unpack her bags full of new clothes, I finally asked the question that had been burning inside me. "How are you affording all this? Your apartment looks expensive, and the car. Are you working too?" Harper shrugged, avoiding my eyes. "I'm just good at budgeting, I'd guess. And I got some scholarships." "What scholarships?" "You had a 2.8 GPA in high school. Just, special ones." She quickly changed the subject. "Want to see the boots I bought last week? They were only $90. Later that night, I overheard my parents in the kitchen, their voices low but clear enough through the thin wall. Harper called about the car, my father said. "It needs some repair work. About $800. "Already?" My mother sounded concerned. "We just paid the insurance yesterday." "I know, but we can cover it. I'll transfer the money tomorrow." The next morning, I confronted them at breakfast while Harper was still asleep. "Are you paying for Harper's car repairs?" I asked directly. My parents looked startled. "You were eavesdropping?" my mother accused. "I overheard. Why does Harper have all these things while I'm working 3 jobs and barely sleeping?" My father sighed. "Audrey, we've been through this. You're capable and independent. Harper needs more support to succeed." "That's not fair," I said, my voice rising despite my effort to stay calm. "I'm drowning in loans and working myself sick while she gets everything handed to her." "Life isn't fair," my mother snapped. "Harper has different needs than you do. She's more sensitive." "And I'm not sensitive? I don't have needs." "You know how to take care of yourself," my father said, as if this were a compliment rather than an excuse for their neglect. This conversation is over. I returned to Cornell after the break with a heavier heart and growing suspicion that there was more to the story than my parents were telling me. As the semester continued, my grades began to slip. Not dramatically, but enough to concern me. I had always been an A student, but now B's and even a C appeared on my assignments. Sleep deprivation and stress were taking their toll on my concentration and memory. One professor, Dr. Stevens, asked me to stay after class one day. "Audrey, your work shows tremendous potential, but it's inconsistent. Is everything all right?" I considered lying but found myself fighting back tears instead. "I'm working a lot of hours to pay for school. Sometimes it's hard to keep up." Dr. Stevens nodded sympathetically. "Many students struggle with the balance. Have you looked into additional financial aid or scholarships?" "I've applied for everything available," I assured him. "This is just how it has to be right now." As the first year of college drew to a close, I felt both proud of my survival and increasingly resentful of the disparity between my situation and Harper's. Something wasn't adding up, and I was determined to find out what my parents weren't telling me. My second year at Cornell began with an additional burden. I needed to find cheaper housing off campus. The dorms, despite their age and cramped conditions, were still too expensive. I found a tiny basement apartment 20 minutes from campus by bus. The space had low ceilings, minimal natural light, and occasionally flooded during heavy rain, but the rent was within my budget if I added a 4th job. This new position was filing paperwork at an insurance office on weekends. Between all 4 jobs, I was now working nearly 40 hours weekly while taking a full course load of challenging architecture classes. My new apartment had no internet. I couldn't afford it, so I stayed late in campus buildings to complete assignments and research projects. My health began to deteriorate noticeably. Dark circles permanently resided under my eyes. I lost weight because I often chose sleep over cooking proper meals. A persistent cough developed in the damp basement environment, and stress hives appeared on my arms during midterms. Meanwhile, Harper's social media displayed an increasingly lavish lifestyle. She posted photos from a spring break trip to Cancun with friends, tagged in expensive restaurants around Minneapolis, and showed off shopping hauls from high-end stores. One post particularly stung, Harper proudly displaying keys to a newly renovated apartment closer to campus for sophomore year convenience. When spring break arrived, I didn't have money to travel home. Instead, I picked up extra shifts and used the quiet campus time to catch up on projects. However, when my persistent cough worsened into what felt like bronchitis, I reluctantly spent my emergency savings on a last-minute flight home to see our family doctor. My parents seemed surprised when I arrived unannounced, but welcomed me with concerned questions about my obvious illness. The doctor prescribed antibiotics and rest, the latter being a luxury I couldn't afford. While recovering in my childhood bedroom, I seized an opportunity one hadn't planned. My parents were attending a neighbor's anniversary party, leaving me alone in the house. A nagging suspicion had grown over months, and now I had a chance to investigate. In my father's home office, I found recent credit card statements in the desk drawer. With shaking hands, I flipped through pages of transactions. There it was, undeniable evidence. Monthly payments for UMen housing at nearly 3 times what I paid for my basement apartment. Regular transfers to Harper's checking account labeled monthly allowance. Auto insurance payments. Tuition payments. Cell phone bills. Clothing store charges. Restaurant meals. My parents weren't just helping Harper with big expenses. They were funding her entire lifestyle while I worked myself sick and went into debt. The front door opened while I was still holding the statements. My mother had returned early to check on me. "What are you doing in your father's office?" she demanded from the doorway. I held up the papers. "I'm finding out the truth. You're paying for everything for Harper." Everything. My mother's face shifted from anger to something more complex, embarrassment mixed with defensiveness. "You shouldn't be going through private papers." "Why?" My voice cracked with emotion. "Why would you make me struggle so much while giving her everything?" My father arrived home minutes later, and a full confrontation erupted in the living room. After initial denials, they finally admitted what the evidence clearly showed. They paid all of Harper's expenses while contributing nothing to mine. "Why?" I asked again, tears streaming down my face. "Please just tell me why." My father sighed deeply. "Harper isn't like you, Audrey. She's sensitive, artistic. She wouldn't survive the pressure you can handle. And I'm not sensitive? I don't feel pain or exhaustion or humiliation." "That's not what we meant," my mother interjected. "You're naturally self-sufficient. You've always been strong and capable. Harper needs more support. Did you ever consider that I might need support too? That just because I can survive doesn't mean I should have to struggle this much." Then my father revealed something that felt like a physical blow. "Harper dropped out of college 3 months ago. She's pursuing acting now." I stared in disbelief. "She dropped out? And you're still paying for her apartment and everything else?" "She needs time to find her path," my mother defended. "The apartment lease was already paid through the year anyway." "What about my path? What about my dreams?" My voice rose as years of suppressed hurt surfaced. "I've wanted to be an architect since 8th grade. I've worked for it every day. I got into Cornell on my own merit. And you couldn't even help with books or a decent place to live." "We believe in you, Audrey," my father said, as if this explained everything. "We know you'll succeed no matter what obstacles you face." "That's not a compliment. You're punishing me for being responsible while rewarding Harper for what exactly? Being irresponsible?" "You don't understand the pressure Harper feels," my mother said. "She's always felt overshadowed by you." The conversation spiraled into painful truths about long-term favoritism. My mother admitted she saw herself in Harper, creative, social, struggling academically. My father confessed he thought hardship would prepare me for the real world, while Harper needed protection from it. I left their house that night in tears, staying with my high school friend Angela rather than spending another minute under my parents' roof. The semester ended with my lowest grades yet. I nearly failed 2 classes due to the emotional distress and continued physical exhaustion. As summer approached, I faced a new crisis. My basement apartment lease ended, and I couldn't afford the increased rent the landlord demanded for renewal. My savings were depleted from medical bills and the emergency trip home. Summer housing on campus was limited and expensive. For the first time, I felt truly desperate with no clear path forward. The culmination of 2 years of exhaustion, financial stress, and emotional betrayal finally crashed over me after my final exams. I sat on a park bench outside the architecture building, staring at my final project, a design that had received a C- when I had never gotten below a B+ in my major before. Professor Winters had written, "Shows potential but lacks attention to detail and completeness." Are you all right, Audrey? I wasn't all right. My hands trembled as I folded the paper and tucked it into my backpack. Every breath felt labored, not just from the lingering respiratory infection, but from the weight of everything pressing down on me. The realization struck me with terrifying clarity. I couldn't continue like this. Something had to give, and that something was my health and education. The following week, I sat in the student services office across from an academic advisor named Fiona who reviewed my file with growing concern. "Your transcript shows excellent work your first semester." Then a steady decline, she observed. That often indicates external factors rather than academic inability. I nodded, too exhausted to maintain the facade of coping. I work almost 40 hours a week across 4 jobs to pay for school. I'm not sleeping. I lost my housing. I can't. My voice broke. Fiona gently pushed a box of tissues toward me. Have you considered a medical leave of absence? It would preserve your academic standing while giving you time to address these issues. The suggestion felt simultaneously like failure and relief. After an evaluation with a university doctor who was alarmed by my physical condition, I was granted a medical leave for the upcoming fall semester. This solved one immediate problem, but created others. Without student status, I lost my campus jobs and access to student housing. My basement apartment was already rented to someone else. With barely $500 to my name, no home, deteriorating health, and a sense of profound failure, I entered the lowest period of my life. For the next 3 weeks, I rotated between staying on friends' couches, working whatever temporary jobs I could find, and spending sleepless nights wondering how everything had gone so wrong. I sold most of my possessions except my laptop and essential textbooks. I showered at the campus gym using a day pass when I could afford it. I ate at the community food bank twice. It was during this period of desperation that fate intervened in the form of a chance encounter. I was sitting in a small cafe where I had splurged on a single cup of coffee to use their Wi-Fi when a familiar voice called my name. "Audrey? Is that you?" I looked up to see my grandfather Lawrence standing beside my table, his expression shifting from delight to concern as he took in my appearance. "Grandpa," I managed, suddenly aware of how I must look, thin, pale, with unwashed hair pulled back in a ponytail. He sat down immediately. "What's happened to you? You look ill." Something about his genuine concern broke through the walls I had built to protect myself. The story poured out of me, my parents' refusal to help with college, the grueling work schedule, the declining grades, the medical leave, my current homelessness, and finally, the discovery of their complete financial support of Harper. Lawrence's expression transformed as I spoke, from concern to disbelief to a controlled anger I had never seen in him before. "Where are you staying tonight?" he asked when I finished. My friend Tara said I could crash on her floor for 2 more days, but then her roommate's boyfriend is moving in temporarily, so I need to find somewhere else. "No." His voice was firm. You're coming home with me. Today. Within hours, I was sitting in my grandfather's modest but comfortable house 30 miles outside the city. He made me soup, insisted I shower and rest, and promised we would figure everything out. For the first time in months, I slept more than 4 hours straight. The next morning, Lawrence sat me down at his kitchen table with a serious expression. "There's something I need to tell you," he began. "I offered to help pay for your education." I stared at him in confusion. "What do you mean?" "When you got accepted to Cornell, I called your father. I told him I wanted to contribute to your college fund. He said you had insisted on being independent and didn't want help from family. He said you were determined to make it on your own." The betrayal cut deeper than I thought possible. "That's not true. They told me they wouldn't help because I needed to learn independence. They never mentioned you offering." "There's more," Lawrence continued, his voice tight with controlled anger. "I was told you chose a less expensive state school over Cornell. I only learned you were actually at Cornell last Christmas when you sent that card with your architecture project photo." "They lied to you too," I whispered, trying to process this new level of deception. "Apparently so. And based on what you've told me about Harper's situation, I have suspicions about where some money might be coming from." Over the next few days, as I rested and began to recover physically, Lawrence made several phone calls and reviewed financial documents. When he finally sat me down again, his expression was grim. "Audrey, when your grandmother passed away 10 years ago, she left a family trust specifically for education expenses for both her grandchildren, you and Harper. Your father is the trustee. The money was meant to be divided equally between you two for college." The revelation felt like being doused with ice water. "Are you saying they've been using my half of a trust fund to pay for Harper's expenses?" Lawrence nodded. "That appears to be the case. The trust should have provided roughly $30,000 per year for each of you during undergraduate education." I broke down completely then, sobbing until I could barely breathe. The injustice wasn't just that my parents favored Harper. They had actively diverted resources that were rightfully mine by inheritance. "I've hit rock bottom," I admitted through tears. "I've lost my housing, my health, nearly failed out of school, and now I discover my own parents stole from me. I don't know how to come back from this." Lawrence put his hand over mine. "You haven't lost everything, Audrey. You have me. And I promise you, this ends now." The quiet determination in my grandfather's voice planted the first seed of hope I'd felt in months. Lawrence was not a confrontational man by nature. He had always been the calm, steady presence in our family, but there was a steel in his eyes I recognized from my own reflection. "First," he said, placing a notepad on the kitchen table, "we need to address your immediate needs. Health, housing, and returning to school. Then we'll deal with your parents." Over the next week, Lawrence helped me make doctor's appointments, including with a therapist who specialized in family trauma. He insisted I stay with him until I recovered my strength. Most importantly, he gave me space to process the anger and grief I had suppressed for too long. "It's all right to be furious," he told me when I apologized for an emotional outburst. "What they did was wrong on every level. Don't bury that." While I focused on healing, Lawrence conducted a thorough investigation into the family trust. He consulted with a financial advisor and a lawyer friend named Marshall. Together, they documented the history of withdrawals and how the funds had been distributed almost exclusively to Harper's expenses. "There are clear terms in your grandmother's will," Lawrence explained, showing me documents I had never seen before. The educational trust was to be divided equally between her grandchildren. Your father, as trustee, had a fiduciary responsibility he's violated. 2 weeks into my stay, Lawrence announced his plan. "I've invited your parents and Harper for dinner this Saturday. I told them it's to discuss family finances and your situation. Will they come?" I asked, anxiety bubbling up at the thought of facing them. "They'll come," Lawrence said with quiet confidence. I mentioned that failure to appear would result in immediate legal action regarding the trust. The day of the dinner arrived with a heaviness in the air. I helped Lawrence prepare a simple meal, my hands shaking slightly as I set the table for 5. When the doorbell rang, I had to take several deep breaths before following my grandfather to the door. My parents entered first, their expressions a mixture of defensiveness and forced politeness. Harper followed, looking confused and uncomfortable. No one quite knew how to greet me. My mother attempted a hug I couldn't reciprocate. My father nodded awkwardly, and Harper gave a small wave. "Thank you for coming," Lawrence said formally, leading everyone to the dining room. "We'll eat first, then talk." The meal passed in strained silence, punctuated by artificial attempts at normal conversation. My mother commented on the lasagna. My father asked about Lawrence's garden. Harper kept glancing at me with questions in her eyes that I wasn't ready to answer. When the plates were cleared, Lawrence brought out a folder and placed it on the table. "I've asked you here to address a serious matter," he began, his voice steady. "The misappropriation of funds from Martha's educational trust and the unconscionable treatment of Audrey." My father immediately tried to interrupt, but Lawrence held up his hand. "I'll speak first, Kenneth. Then you'll have your chance." Over the next 15 minutes, my grandfather methodically laid out the evidence: trust documents showing the intended equal division, bank records revealing the one-sided distributions, and finally, medical reports documenting the physical toll on my health. "Audrey has been working 40 hours weekly while taking full-time classes," he concluded. "She's developed chronic health issues from stress and inadequate living conditions." Meanwhile, Harper has received over $60,000 annually from the trust that was meant to be shared equally. The room fell silent. My father stared at the documents, color draining from his face. My mother looked like she might be sick. Harper's expression was one of genuine shock. "We were doing what we thought best for both girls," my father finally said, his voice lacking its usual confidence. "Harper needs more support to succeed. And Audrey needed to develop independence," my mother added weakly. "At the cost of her health? Her education? Nearly becoming homeless." Lawrence's voice rose slightly. "You lied to me about her attending Cornell. You rejected my offer to help financially while telling Audrey no help was available. You diverted her inheritance to Harper without her knowledge or consent." "I didn't know," Harper interjected suddenly, looking at me with tears in her eyes. "Audrey, I swear I didn't know the money was supposed to be yours too." I believed her. Harper had been raised to accept her special treatment as normal. She had never questioned why things came easily to her while I struggled. "I want to hear from Audrey now," Lawrence said, turning to me. All eyes shifted to me. The moment I had imagined countless times had arrived, and suddenly the words poured out. "I have loved you and trusted you my entire life," I said to my parents, my voice surprisingly steady. "I worked hard. I earned my place at Cornell. I never asked for everything to be handed to me, just for fair treatment and the support I deserved as your daughter." I described the exhaustion of working 4 jobs, the humiliation of couch surfing and using food banks, the physical toll that led to my medical leave. "The worst part wasn't even the struggle," I continued. "It was believing I wasn't worth investing in. That Harper somehow deserved everything while I deserved nothing. Do you have any idea what that does to someone?" My mother was crying now. My father looked away, unable to meet my eyes. "I don't want your pity," I told them. "I want accountability. I want you to acknowledge what you did was wrong, morally and legally wrong." After a long silence, my father spoke. "We made mistakes, Audrey. Serious ones." "Mistakes," I repeated. "Mistakes are accidental. This was systematic favoritism over years. This was theft." "You're right," my mother admitted quietly. "We justified it to ourselves that Harper needed more. But we never considered what you needed. We took advantage of your strength instead of nurturing it." Lawrence cleared his throat. "Here's what happens next. I've drawn up papers to remove Kenneth as trustee of Martha's educational fund. I'll be taking over that responsibility. The remaining money will go directly to Audrey's education as it should have from the beginning. My father nodded without protest. Additionally, Lawrence continued. You will reimburse the trust for the amount that should have gone to Audrey over the past 2 years. If you can't manage the full amount immediately, we can discuss a payment plan. We'll figure it out, my father said quietly. Whatever it takes. Harper spoke up again. I want to help too. I didn't know where the money was coming from, but I benefited while you suffered. That's not right. For the first time that evening, I felt a glimmer of connection with my sister. She had been as much a product of our parents' warped priorities as I had been. Thank you, I said to her. That means something. As the evening concluded, Lawrence presented one final condition. This family needs healing. I'm requiring family therapy sessions, all 4 of you, as part of moving forward. This pattern stops now. On the porch as they were leaving, my father paused beside me. I'm sorry, Audrey. We failed you in fundamental ways. I don't expect forgiveness, but I hope someday you'll give us a chance to try to make things right. I didn't have an answer for him yet. The wound was too fresh. The betrayal too deep. But as I watched their car pull away, I felt something shift inside me. Not forgiveness, but perhaps the first step toward reclaiming my power and my future. The weeks following the confrontation brought rapid changes to my circumstances. Lawrence helped me secure a comfortable apartment near campus, with proper heating and ventilation, a stark contrast to the damp basement that had contributed to my illness. For the first time, I had a space that felt safe and dignified. This is too much, I protested when I saw the sunny one-bedroom with a small balcony. It's exactly what you deserve, Lawrence insisted. The trust is now paying what it should have all along. With stable housing and financial security in place, I focused on my health. The respiratory issues slowly improved. Regular meals and adequate sleep restored my energy. The therapist, Dr. Gabriella Franklin, helped me process the complex emotions surrounding my family's betrayal. What you experienced was a form of financial abuse and favoritism, she explained during one session. Your reaction, anger, grief, confusion, these are all normal responses to abnormal treatment. By late August, I felt strong enough to meet with Cornell's readmission committee, with medical documentation and a clear plan for support going forward. I was approved to return for the fall semester. Professor Winters, who had noted my struggling performance, became an unexpected ally, helping me map out a schedule to catch up on core architecture requirements. The most challenging aspect of my recovery involved family therapy. Lawrence had made it a non-negotiable condition of his financial assistance to my parents. They would participate in regular sessions with all 4 family members present. The first meeting was nearly unbearable, with tension so thick it felt hard to breathe in the therapist's office. Dr. Morris, a family counselor with 30 years of experience, established ground rules immediately. We're here to listen, understand, and begin healing, not to accuse or defend. Everyone will have equal time to speak. My parents initially approached the sessions with reluctance barely disguised as cooperation. My father would check his watch repeatedly. My mother would deflect difficult questions with tears. Harper seemed genuinely committed, but struggled to understand her role in the dynamic. I never asked for special treatment, she said during our 3rd session. I just accepted what was given to me. Children shouldn't have to ask for equal treatment, Dr. Morris noted. That responsibility falls to the parents. The breakthrough came unexpectedly during our 5th session when Dr. Morris asked my mother a simple question. Diana, who did your parents favor in your family? My mother froze, then suddenly began sobbing. Through tears, she revealed how her older sister Cynthia had been their parents' clear favorite, smarter, more accomplished, the focus of family resources and attention. I swore I would never make a child feel the way I felt, she admitted. But instead of treating both daughters equally, I overcorrected. I saw myself in Harper, creative, struggling academically, and I wanted to protect her from feeling inferior. And Audrey reminded you of Cynthia, Dr. Morris suggested. My mother nodded. Capable, intelligent, self-sufficient. I unconsciously resented those qualities while simultaneously taking advantage of them. This revelation didn't immediately heal our relationship, but it provided context I had never understood before. My father had his own reckoning when forced to examine his enabling role. I wanted peace at home, he admitted. Diana was so insistent about Harper's needs that I took the path of least resistance. I told myself you were fine, Audrey, because acknowledging otherwise would have meant confronting Diana and myself. While family therapy continued its difficult work, I immersed myself in rebuilding my academic standing. With proper rest and financial security, my natural abilities resurfaced. My designs regained their precision and creativity. Professors who had watched my decline now remarked on my resilience. Harper and I began cautiously building a relationship independent of our parents. She had moved into a much smaller apartment and taken a part-time job, choices she made voluntarily after understanding the imbalance in our treatment. I never saw it before. She told me over coffee one weekend. Everything was just handed to me while you worked yourself sick. It wasn't fair. It wasn't your fault, I reminded her. You didn't create the system. No, but I benefited from it without questioning it. I'm sorry, Audrey. By the spring semester, I had fully caught up academically and secured a coveted internship with an architectural firm in Ithaca for the summer. The portfolio I submitted featured designs completed during my recovery period, buildings that incorporated themes of balance, support, and interdependence. My relationship with my parents remained complicated. Some days brought progress, my father helping me move furniture into my apartment. My mother sending thoughtful care packages rather than focusing exclusively on Harper. Other days, old patterns emerged, requiring careful navigation and firm boundaries. Recovery isn't linear, Dr. Franklin reminded me during therapy. There will be setbacks alongside progress. The important thing is that you now have tools to recognize and address them. Grandfather Lawrence remained my steadfast supporter, visiting monthly and calling weekly. He took his role as trustee seriously, ensuring both Harper and I received fair financial support for our educations. Your grandmother would be proud of you, he told me as we walked through campus on one visit. Not just for your achievements, but for your courage in standing up for yourself. 2 years after the confrontation, I stood on the graduation stage at Cornell, accepting my degree in architecture with honors. The audience included Lawrence in the front row, beaming with pride. My parents and Harper sat beside him, their presence representing the ongoing work of rebuilding family bonds rather than complete resolution. The diploma in my hands symbolized more than academic achievement. It represented my journey from powerlessness to agency, from victim to advocate for my own worth. As I moved the tassel from one side of my cap to the other, I silently thanked my younger self for persevering through those darkest days. 5 years have passed since that graduation day. At 33, I now work as a project architect at a respected firm in Boston, specializing in sustainable community spaces. My latest design, a community center built from repurposed materials, recently won a regional award for innovation. The corner office with windows overlooking the harbor reminds me daily how far I've come from that damp basement apartment where I once struggled to breathe. Financial independence became my first priority after college. I built an emergency fund, invested carefully, and purchased a small but beautiful condo overlooking a neighborhood park. Never again would I be vulnerable to having my security controlled by others. The lessons of those difficult years shaped my approach to money, pragmatic but not fearful, careful but not constrained. My relationship with my parents has evolved into something I never expected, not the uncomplicated closeness of childhood, but a measured adult connection built on new understanding. The weekly family therapy sessions eventually transitioned to monthly, then quarterly check-ins. We still attend occasionally when old patterns resurface or new challenges emerge. Mother finally acknowledged, after 3 years of therapy, how her own childhood wounds had distorted her parenting. I was so afraid of repeating my parents' favoritism that I created exactly what I feared, she admitted during a particularly honest conversation. I see now how much I hurt you. Father took longer to fully recognize his complicity. His breakthrough came during a session where Dr. Morris asked him to imagine his own father treating him as he had treated me. The exercise left him visibly shaken and finally able to offer a genuine apology without qualifications. I failed you as a father, he said, holding my gaze directly for perhaps the first time. I can't undo that harm, but I'm committed to being better going forward. I've learned that forgiveness doesn't mean forgetting or pretending the hurt never happened. It means freeing myself from the weight of resentment while maintaining appropriate boundaries. Some days are easier than others. Holiday gatherings still sometimes trigger old feelings of inequality. But now I can name them, address them, and move through them rather than suppressing them. Harper's journey surprised everyone, including herself. After initially floundering without the excessive support she'd grown accustomed to, she discovered genuine passion and talent for event management. She now runs her own small company planning sustainable weddings and corporate functions. Our relationship has grown into a friendship between equals rather than competitors in an unbalanced system. You know what's weird, she said during a recent sister weekend in Chicago. I think I would have found my path sooner if they hadn't made everything so easy. I never had to figure anything out for myself. Grandfather Lawrence remains my most trusted advisor and supporter. At 82, he still maintains his garden, travels annually to architectural landmarks around the country, and calls me every Sunday evening. When I recently considered taking a risk on starting my own firm, he was the first person I consulted. Your grandmother always said you need to bend with the wind to avoid breaking, he told me. But she also believed in building strong foundations that can weather any storm. You've done both. Last summer, family dynamics faced their most significant test since the original confrontation. My wedding to Benjamin, a structural engineer I met through work, brought everyone together for an extended weekend of celebrations. Old tensions surfaced during planning. My mother attempted to take control of arrangements, my father questioned my budget priorities, and Harper momentarily slipped into seeking special attention. The difference was that this time, we had tools to address these patterns. I called a family meeting the night before the rehearsal dinner. I need everyone to be aware of what's happening. I said calmly, we're falling into old roles, and I won't let that overshadow this important event. To my surprise, everyone listened. My mother stepped back from planning. My father apologized for his comments, and Harper redirected her energy toward being genuinely helpful rather than center stage. The wedding proceeded beautifully, a testament to how far we had all come. Throughout this journey, I've learned invaluable lessons about self-worth that shape every aspect of my life. First, and most importantly, your value is inherent, not determined by how others treat you. For years, I internalized the message that I wasn't worth investing in, that my needs mattered less than my sisters'. Breaking free from that belief was my greatest challenge and achievement. Second, being capable doesn't mean you should have to struggle unnecessarily. My parents exploited my strength and independence rather than nurturing it. Now I understand that asking for appropriate help and support isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Third, fairness matters, especially in families. Equal treatment doesn't mean identical treatment. Different people have different needs, but the underlying message should always be, you are equally valued. When that message is consistently contradicted by actions, the damage runs deep. Most importantly, I've learned that speaking truth, even when terrifying, can transform seemingly hopeless situations. Had I not confronted my parents, had Lawrence not discovered the truth about the trust, I might still be trapped in that cycle of exhaustion and diminishment rather than thriving in my career and relationships. These realizations don't just apply to family dynamics. In my professional life, I've advocated for junior architects facing inequitable treatment. In my community, I volunteer with a program helping first-generation college students navigate financial aid systems. The pain I experienced has been transformed into purpose, not because suffering is necessary for growth, but because understanding injustice firsthand creates powerful empathy. Benjamin often says he wishes he could have known me during those difficult college years, but I'm not sure I would want him to have seen me at my lowest. Those experiences shaped me, but they don't define me. I am not just a survivor of family favoritism and financial abuse. I am an architect, a mentor, a friend, a wife. A person who has rebuilt her life on a foundation of self-respect and clear boundaries. If you've ever experienced similar family dynamics or felt unseen and undervalued by those who should have supported you most, I hope my story offers some comfort and perspective. Healing is possible. Reclaiming your worth is possible. Building a life that honors your talents and needs is not just possible, it's your right. Have you experienced family favoritism or had to overcome similar challenges? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please subscribe and hit the like button so others who might need to hear this message can find it too. Remember, recognizing your worth is the first step toward building the life you deserve.